What is going on with Ghost of Tsushima? We haven't heard anything in more than a year now, while it should still release for the PlayStation 4 before the next console from Sony is out in the fall of 2020. In this video I want to tell you everything we know about this very promising looking game from Sucker Punch, what the latest rumors are about the release date, and when we can hopefully see and hear more about the game. So let's get into it. Would be awesome if you could leave a like on the video as it shows your support, and let's go. Paris Games Week 2017 is when we saw this open world samurai game for the first time during the Sony press conference. We got a glimpse of the world, Tsushima Island, in 1274. When a Mongol invasion tried to take over Japan. We take control over Jin, one of the last surviving samurais who wants to fight back. And good to note is that this is Sucker Punch's version of this world, totally inspired by the history, but they will tell their own stories with their own fictional characters. They have a team in Japan though, helping them out, advising them to get the right tone for the game, and the game will also feature full Japanese voices with English subtitles if that is what you want. And by the way, everything you see in this Paris Games Week trailer is something we can visit in the game. This was noted during the PlayStation Experience panel a few months after the announcement, where they also showcased some new art that looks absolutely beautiful. Half a year later, E3 2018 was the biggest moment for the game yet, where for the first time we saw gameplay. A vertical slice of a side mission that you will encounter as you play, one that delves deeper into the story of Masako, who fights alongside you against the Mongol invaders. Although in this mission she turns against you because of her personal history, and that results in this awesome looking sort of boss battle. We saw no UI in this gameplay trailer, and while the game will feature one, it should be very limited to immerse you as much as possible. I was lucky enough to see the game being played in front of me during E3 2018, and at one point they were pausing the game and turning the camera around to showcase how the blood was realistically falling on the ground during the awesome combat scene against the multiple enemies. It's not a surprise at this point that a PlayStation 4 exclusive will feature a photo mode, and Ghost of Tsushima will be no exception. And during this presentation they noted that the photo mode should be available at launch. Other cool details I learned was that nothing will be supernatural in the game, and that the combat should be pretty skillful, while you are still able to find new gear for your character by exploring the world that will likely impact your stats in some way. We already saw multiple outfits for Jin, one in the Paris Games Week trailer and now one he is using in the E3 2018 gameplay. And we also see him use the grappling hook here, and that is one of the skills you actually have to unlock first before you can use it. There should also be a crafting system that they did not want to talk about yet, and choices that should impact the story, and that's not really weird looking at the infamous games that Sucker Punch made before this that were all really about the good or the bad choices. Hopefully it's less black and white in this game. So yes, it's an open world RPG, and it obviously takes some time to make. They were at 55% of the development at E3 2018. That was their response to a question I was able to ask during the E3 presentation. I was very surprised because they started this game at the end of 2014, straight after the most recent title, the standalone DLC for Infamous Second Son called Infamous First Light. On LinkedIn we got Ian John Y. Chiu, and I hope I pronounced that right, who started as a concept artist on the game in February of 2015. So 3.5 years later they would be at 55%. Sure, that doesn't mean that we then still have 3 more years to go before the game is out, but I do feel that that means that a release in 2019 and even early 2020 is looking too good to be true. I speculated in that video following the E3 2018 presentation that the second half of 2020 would be my bet, and now there are rumors that point in that similar direction. First, Jason Schreier from Kotaku, who of course reported on many correct rumors in the past, like the fact that Microsoft would be buying Obsidian, or more recent, that Destiny would be coming to Google Stadia with cross-save. Both were correct, and there are way more examples of this, so yes, he has trustworthy sources. So on June 1st, before E3, he replied to someone asking if all the games you see in this tweet including Ghost of Tsushima, would be in the first half of next year. With Jason saying yes to all of those. And now after E3 we indeed know that Ubisoft has 2 or actually 3 games coming out in the first half of 2020. That Final Fantasy VII Remake is in March, Cyberpunk is hitting in April. So yes, you would think that Ghost of Tsushima is correct then too. He actually gave some extra info on his Split Screen podcast. I'll put a link to that podcast in the description of this video. Let's hear the audio.
Ghost of Tsushima we'll probably see in like April, May-ish of next year, at some point early next year.
In that same podcast, he notes that The Last of Us Part 2 is from what he heard planned for February 2020. And in December 2017, during the PlayStation Experience, Neil Druckmann, of course the game director on The Last of Us Part 2, noted that The Last of Us Part 2 was around the 50 to 60% done. Ghost of Tsushima hit that same milestone half a year later, so not weird that this game is coming out later than The Last of Us Part 2. So April or May, because again The Last of Us Part 2 is rumored for February 2020, would make a ton of sense. I would say even later for Ghost of Tsushima, so August or early September, the Spider-Man window, and that is really because of the insane competition in the spring of 2020. With Cyberpunk, Dying Light 2 that is supposed to hit somewhere around that time, and the Avengers will be out in May as well. Days Gone really benefited from a quiet release period, and I think that Ghost of Tsushima will do too. But yeah, that is the latest info on the release date, so spring 2020 or likely summer 2020 is when the game will launch. That the game was still far off was also indicated by a job listing for a narrative writer that showed up recently. The description noted that this person had to write high quality dialogue under tight deadlines, implying that a lot of the narrative still needs to be made. And I actually think that Jordan Lemus is in this role now, a writer who worked on Assassin's Creed Odyssey before and joined Sucker Punch in June 2019. He by the way recently came in the news because he thought that a sequel to The Order 1886 was in development, but that was false alarm because he was just guessing based on articles he read a year ago. So don't get your hopes up on that one, although I do think that we deserve a sequel because the game ended like in the middle of something, like it did not feel like a right ending. Either way, that's a topic maybe for another video. Let's get back to Ghost of Tsushima. Because Andrew Goldfarb, who previously worked at IGN, also joined Sucker Punch, but as a communications manager. And that was back in March. So you might ask, what is he communicating about? Well, not a lot, at least not externally. I think that a great comparison is Andy Wong, who joined Crystal Dynamics as a community and social media manager on the Avengers project in February 2019, and then 4 months later they finally revealed the game and he could start communicating and doing the social media. That was not active when he started to work there. So I can totally see something similar happen with Andrew Goldfarb, because it really makes no sense to hire a communications manager and then not let him communicate about the game for half a year or longer. The E3 2018 gameplay demo was the last piece of footage that we saw from Ghost of Tsushima, so hopefully that will change soon. Gamescom is the next big event that is coming up, and Sony will be there according to the official Gamescom website with a stand in Hall 7.1. And this is already pretty interesting because they of course skipped E3, so this is the first time that they go to a real dedicated game show since the announcements that were made in June. Would already be big if they had Death Stranding there. Would make sense because that game is already coming out in November. It seems like Square, likely with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and Activision with Call of Duty will be part of the Sony booth, as they can both be found on the same stand as Sony, but then Sony seems to have way more room. Maybe this is where we will finally see new Ghost of Tsushima footage. There is this Gamescom opening night going on as well, with announcements from major game publishers and independent developers, world premieres, and also new game footage and special guest appearances. Maybe we see something new there. Although, again, I think that other PS4 exclusives, including The Last of Us Part 2, will get the spotlight first. Tokyo Game Show is coming up as well, and Sony will be there, and Ghost of Tsushima is set in Japan. Would be a great place to highlight it there, or will Sony do a new state of play really soon with gameplay for Ghost of Tsushima? Death Stranding, The Last of Us Part 2, and then Ghost of Tsushima, that seems to be the order that they will release in, so I totally think that we will get a spotlight on those games first. But you also want to communicate about Ghost of Tsushima, ignite that flame again, show us a small teaser trailer. When we know more, I will of course let you know here on the channel, because this is really one of my most anticipated games. I loved the Infamous games, and this setting and the fact that it's a single player open world RPG speaks even more to me. So totally subscribe for everything on Ghost of Tsushima if you haven't already. Like this video to support the channel, and totally check out my previous video on the fall of 2020, the PS5 versus Xbox Scarlet, and Xbox will have Halo Infinite. So what launch game will Sony have? I got some theories. For now though, I will speak to you next time, and goodbye.